A vow forged in betrayal, shocking hook alert. A life of curated perfection, shattered by a single, agonizing truth. This isn't just a divorce story. It's a brutal, high-stakes game of survival where the deepest betrayal comes from the one you trusted the most. Get ready for a twist you won't see coming. Subscribe to our channel so you don't miss more thrilling stories. Hit that like button and let us know your immediate thoughts on this setup in the comments. They were the golden couple of Manhattan. Elias Thorne, the ruthless tech titan, a self-made man whose name was synonymous with innovation and cutthroat success. And Clara, his stunning, elegant wife, the woman who seemed to have tamed his wild, ambition-driven heart. Their lives were a meticulously curated masterpiece, filled with breathtaking views from their Central Park penthouse, lavish charity galas, and whispers of pure envy. But beneath the polished facade of their New York paradise, a devastating secret lay hidden. In one heartbreaking moment, the masterpiece would shatter, proving that the deepest betrayals often come from the hands you trust the most. This is a story of survival, vengeance, and a shocking twist that no one, absolutely no one, ever predicted. Chapter 1. The Gilded Cage. The air in the penthouse of 157, 60 stories up, always smelled like money. It was a crisp, sterile scent, a blend of rare orchids he insisted on having, and the subtle, costly perfume that clung to Clara's skin. For the last 5 years, their lives had been an exercise in impeccable public image. Elias Thorne, the fintech prodigy, had built an empire from a single, brilliant algorithm. He was sharp, impossibly handsome, and possessed a potent charisma that could bend anyone to his will. In contrast, Clara was the quiet masterpiece of his collection. She had met him not in a boardroom, but in a dusty, vibrant art gallery in the Lower East Side, where she curated an exhibition for emerging artists. He had been a whirlwind, a force of nature that swept her into a life she'd only read about. She loved him, or rather, she loved the man he was in the quiet moments, the rare nights when the phones were off, his guard was down, and he would trace the lines on her hand, speaking of a future that felt almost normal. Tonight, however, was the annual Thorne Industries Gala, an event that required Clara to be more of an accessory than a wife. She stood beside Elias near the floor-to-ceiling windows, a vision in a sapphire silk gown that matched the audacious diamond necklace, the Thorne Star, as the press had dubbed it, a gift for their last anniversary. "You look dazzling, darling," Elias murmured, his hand a possessive weight on her lower back. His eyes, though, were not on her. They were scanning the room, calculating, evaluating, making connections, even in his adoration. "Thank you, Elias," she offered with a practiced smile as a flashbulb went off nearby. Just then, Serena, her best friend since college, cut through the crowd toward them. Serena was a marked, vibrant contrast to Clara. While Clara was serene and classic, Serena was a chaotic burst of energy, with a loud laugh, fiery red hair, and a designer dress that left little to the imagination. It was Serena who had encouraged Clara to give the intimidating billionaire a chance all those years ago. "There they are, the King and Queen of Manhattan!" Serena gushed, blowing air kisses to both of them. "Clara, you look like a goddess. Elias, you clean up all right. Serena, you have no shame." Elias chuckled, a genuine, easy laugh he seemed to reserve only for her. Clara felt a familiar, tiny pang. It was a feeling she always quickly dismissed as insecurity. Serena was family, her biggest cheerleader. But sometimes, the way Elias looked at Serena was with a familiar, intimate look of unguardedness he rarely showed Clara in public. Do you think Clara should have noticed something was wrong? Can you already guess the twist in this story? Tell us your predictions in the comments. Later that night, Clara found herself cornered by the one member of the Thorne family who never seemed to fit. Grant, Elias's younger brother. Where Elias was a supernova, Grant was a quiet constellation. He was a literature professor at Columbia, with kind, thoughtful eyes and a preference for tweed jackets over designer suits. "Surviving the spectacle?" Grant asked, handing her a glass of water. He was the only one who seemed to notice she hadn't had a sip of champagne all night. Clara gave him a grateful smile. "Barely. It's your family, and I still feel like I need a manual." "The only manual you need is a good exit strategy," he quipped, his gaze soft. "How are you, really?" The simple question almost disarmed her. She took a deep breath, her hand instinctively going to her stomach. She and Elias had been trying for a baby for the last year, a topic of much private tension and clinically scheduled intimacy. The stress had been immense, but 2 weeks ago, 2 faint pink lines had appeared, and a fragile, secret joy had taken root inside her. She hadn't told Elias yet. She was waiting for the perfect quiet moment, one that felt, "I'm happy," she said. And for the first time on that hot night, it was the varnished truth. She decided tonight was the night. The gala was a success. Elias was in a triumphant mood, and her heart felt too full to keep the secret any longer. When they finally returned to the vast, silent solitude of the penthouse, Elias was already loosening his tie, his mind still buzzing from the night's conquests. "We closed the Hong Kong expansion deal," he said, pouring a scotch. "Our rival caved, just as I said they would." "Elias, that's amazing," Clara said softly. "But I have news too. Something wonderful." He turned, taking a sip of his drink. "Did you buy another canvas from one of your starving artists?" The casual disdain stung, but she pressed on. "No, it's about us." She took a breath. "Elias, I'm pregnant." The silence that followed wasn't the breathless, joyful silence she had imagined. It was heavy, suffocating. The ice in his glass tinkled as his hand trembled slightly. He stared at her, an unreadable expression on his face. And for the first time, Clara felt a genuine pang of fear. "Pregnant?" He repeated the word, sounding alien in his mouth. "Yes, we're having a baby." She tried to smile to close the sudden, terrifying chasm that had opened between them. He downed his scotch in one gulp and set the glass down with a sharp clack. He walked toward the window, turning his back to her, a silhouette against the glittering, indifferent city. "I need air," he said, his voice flat and cold. He walked out of the room, not onto the balcony, but through the main door. Clara stood frozen, her hand on her still flat stomach, listening to the sound of the elevator doors opening and closing, taking her husband and all her dreams with him. Don't miss the next video to discover the shocking turn that changes everything. Chapter 2. The Friend's Betrayal. Elias didn't return that night, nor the next. The first 48 hours were a blur of confusion and self-deception. Clara told herself he was just overwhelmed. Elias had always been terrified of anything he couldn't control, and a baby was the ultimate variable. He needed space. He would come back. She called his phone, but the call went straight to voicemail. She called his assistant, who was polite but evasively firm. "Mr. Thorne is unavailable." Serena, of course, was her rock. She was at the penthouse an hour after Clara's tearful phone call, bringing with her a tub of ice cream and a torrent of indignation on Clara's behalf. "He what?" Serena exclaimed, pacing the marble floor. "He just left after you told him you were pregnant? I swear, Clara, I'm going to kill him. The man, for all his billions, has the emotional intelligence of a sea slug." Clara sobbed into a cashmere cushion. "I don't understand, Serena. I thought this was what we both wanted." "Shh, baby, it's okay." Serena hugged her. "Men are idiots. Rich men are a special breed of idiot. He's probably holed up in some hotel, having a panic attack. Give him a few days. He'll come crawling back, begging for forgiveness. They always do. Serena's presence was a bomb. She stayed for 2 days, sleeping in the guest room, fielding calls, and managing Clara's mounting anxiety. She made tea, ran baths, and cursed Elias's name with a loyalty that felt like a lifeline. On the 3rd day, Clara's phone buzzed. It was a text from a number she didn't recognize. "If you want to know where your husband is, go to the Blackwood Hotel, Penthouse B." Clara's heart hammered. The Blackwood was a boutique hotel known for its discretion, a place for clandestine meetings and quiet affairs. "Look at this," she said, her hand shaking as she showed Serena the phone. Serena's face hardened. "Don't you dare, Clara. It's a trick. Someone is trying to hurt you. Elias is probably at his golf club, sulking. But what if he's not? What if he's in trouble? Then he can use his billions to get out of it." Serena replied with a hint of sharpness. "You're pregnant. You need to stay here and rest. I'll go. I'll check it out and I'll read him the riot act if he's there." Clara felt a wave of relief. "You would? Serena, thank you." Serena squeezed her hand. "Of course. That's what best friends are for. Now, lock the door behind me and don't talk to anyone." Clara waited. The minutes stretched into eternity. An hour passed, then 2. She tried calling Serena, but her phone, like Elias's, went straight to voicemail. A cold, heavy dread began to pool in her stomach. Something was wrong. She couldn't stay here, a prisoner in her own home. Against every self-preserving instinct, she called a taxi and went to the Blackwood Hotel. Her hands trembled as she walked into the opulent, silent lobby. She didn't know what she was going to do. Bang on the door, make a scene. She didn't have to. As she stood by the elevator, trying to gather the courage to go up, the doors opened, and they stepped out. Elias and Serena weren't arguing. They weren't fighting. They were laughing. Serena was clinging to Elias's arm, her head tilted back. Her fiery red hair brushed his shoulder. He was looking down at her with that intimate, unguarded expression Clara had often envied, the one she had foolishly believed was just friendship. As they crossed the lobby, he leaned down and kissed her. Not a peck on the cheek, but a deep, lingering kiss. One full of a history Clara never knew existed. The world tilted on its axis. The air left Clara's lungs. The sound in her ears was a deafening roar. They didn't see her. They were in their own world, a world built on the foundation of her broken heart. She stumbled backward, hitting a marble column, the cold stone a shocking jolt back to reality. She spun around and fled, bursting out onto the street, gasping for air that felt thick and poisonous. The betrayal was a physical thing, a blade twisting in her gut. It wasn't just that Elias had left her. He had left her for her best friend, her blood sister. How long? The question screamed in her mind. How long had this been going on? The shared jokes, the lingering glances, Serena's constant presence, her fierce defense of Clara. It had all been a lie, an act. She returned to the penthouse, the beautiful prison, now a monument to her naivete. The orchids seemed to mock her. The skyline seemed to smile. She stalked through the rooms, seeing everything with a horrible new clarity. Serena's sweater, left on a chair. A bottle of wine she had brought over, the kind Elias particularly liked. The small intimacies and shared secrets of a friendship that had been a complete and utter fraud. Her pain was so deep it hardened into a cold, sharp anger. She walked into Elias's meticulously organized closet, the rows of identical suits a testament to his soulless precision. With a guttural scream, she began ripping them from their hangers, tossing them onto the floor. She smashed his ridiculously expensive watches. She poured a bottle of red wine all over his pristine white shirts. It was a storm of destruction, a desperate attempt to make the external world reflect the ruin inside her. In the midst of the chaos, she collapsed onto the floor, surrounded by the wreckage of her marriage. She was 6 weeks pregnant. She was utterly alone, and the two people she had loved and trusted most in the world had just burned her life to the ground. Do you think Clara will give up? What would you do in her place? Comment below. It was then her phone rang. The screen flashed with a name she had almost forgotten. Grant Thorne. She ignored it, letting it go to voicemail. A minute later, a text came through. Clara, I heard what Elias did. I am so sorry. Please don't be alone right now. I'm outside your building. Just tell the doorman to let me up. I'll wait. She stared at the text, her tears blurring the words. She had no one. She had no best friend. She had no husband. But maybe, just maybe, she had a brother, a quiet savior. Clara let him wait 20 minutes. It was a petty act of control in a life that had completely spun out. She sat on the floor of her ruined closet, listening to the silence, wondering if he would give up and leave. He didn't. Finally, with a sigh that felt like it came from the depths of her soul, she picked up the intercom and told the doorman to let him up. When Grant walked in, he didn't flinch at the scene before him. He saw the ransacked living room, the wine-stained remnants of the closet, and finally, Clara, huddled on the floor like a discarded doll. His face was a mask of profound sorrow, not for the material possessions, but for her. He didn't speak. He simply walked over. He sat on the floor opposite her and slid a takeout container of soup across the rug between them. It was chicken soup with matzo balls from a downtown deli, one she had once told him she loved. I figured you hadn't eaten, he said softly. That simple act of kindness did what the betrayal had failed to. It made her completely break. A wrenching, ugly sob tore from her chest, and she doubled over. The pain was too immense to contain. Grant leaned forward, not touching her. Just being there. A solid, unmoving presence in the storm. He told the family this morning, Grant said, his voice heavy with disgust. On a conference call, no less. Like it was a corporate merger. Clara and I are separating. I will now be with Serena. The lawyers will handle the rest. The lawyers, Clara whispered, her voice raw. He's divorcing me? Yes. Grant's jaw was tight. And apparently my mother is more worried about the price of Thorne Industries stock than the fact that her son is a monster. For the next few hours, as the city lights began to glitter outside, Clara talked. She told him everything. The pregnancy announcement, Elias's cold departure, the text, the hotel. She purged the poison. The words poured out in a torrent of grief and fury. Grant listened. His quiet attention was a lifeline. He never said, "I told you so," or "I never liked her," though the sentiment was clear in his eyes. Serena! Clara choked on the name. She was my sister. She was here, Grant. She held me while I cried over him, knowing she was the reason he was gone. Some people are black holes, Clara, Grant said, his voice heavy. They just consume everything good around them. My brother has always been one. Sounds like he found his perfect match. In the days that followed, Grant became her shadow, her protector. Elias's lawyers, a ruthless, efficient firm, began their assault. Formal letters arrived. Her credit cards were canceled. A formidable man in a suit showed up to inform her that my sister, Mrs. Thorne, required her to vacate the penthouse in 30 days. She was being erased. It was Grant who found her a lawyer, a shrewd, empathetic woman who specialized in fighting powerful men. It was he who helped her pack, sorting through the remnants of her life. Without judgment, never rushing, he packed her art books and the canvases of her starving artists more carefully than anything else. On a rainy Tuesday, as they sealed the last of the boxes, Clara sank onto the bare mattress, the only furniture left in the cavernous bedroom. The magnitude of her new reality was overwhelming. She was pregnant, jobless, and soon to be homeless, or in a legal battle with a billionaire who held all the cards. "I can't do this," she whispered. Tears tracked silently down her cheeks. "Yes, you can," Grant said. "He took things. He took a building and a bank account. He didn't take your strength. He didn't take your intelligence. And God damn it, he didn't take that baby." He pointed to her stomach. "That is yours, and that is everything." The conviction in his voice startled her. He saw a strength in her that she couldn't see in herself. They relocated her to a modest 2-bedroom apartment downtown, which Grant had found through a university colleague. It was small, the floors creaked, and the view was of a brick wall. But it was safe. It was hers. Grant helped her unpack. He stocked her fridge and assembled a crib. They fell into a comfortable, domestic rhythm. He would come by after his classes, bringing food or just his quiet company. They ate dinner, sitting on the floor because she didn't have a table yet, talking about books, art, and everything but Elias. He made her feel human again. She began to see the man he was, separate from his infamous family. He was brilliant, yet humble. Kind, without agenda. He had his father's intelligence, but his mother's heart. A combination the rest of the Thorns seemed to view as a weakness. Clara saw it as his greatest strength. A dangerous, unfamiliar warmth began to bloom in her chest whenever he was near. Chapter 3. The dangerous kiss. The loneliness grew sharp. The pregnancy was making her emotional, and the weight of everything was piling onto her. She called Grant, her voice choked with tears, not even sure what she wanted. "I'll be there in a moment," he said. No questions asked. He arrived with a bottle of non-alcoholic sparkling cider and 2 glasses. They sat on her new sofa, the silence thick with unsaid words. "Thank you, Grant," she said, looking at him. Really looking. "I don't know what I would have done without you." "You would have been fine," he said, his eyes seeking hers. "You're the strongest person I know." "No, I'm not. I'm a mess. I'm a charity case living off my brother-in-law's kindness." "Never," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Ever call yourself that." He reached out his thumb, gently wiping a tear from her cheek. His touch was electric, a spark of warmth in the cold vacuum of her life. The air crackled. The months of shared grief, quiet support, and growing affection coalesced into that single moment. She leaned in, and he met her halfway. The kiss was born not of passion or lust, but of a shared, desperate loneliness and a deep, nascent love. It was soft, searching, and felt more real than any of the performative embraces she had shared with Elias. They broke apart, both breathless and startled. "Clara," he started, his voice husky with a mix of awe and regret. "I know," she whispered. They knew they had crossed a line, a beautiful, terrifying, irreversible line, in the quiet of her tiny apartment, surrounded by the boxes of her old life. She realized she wasn't just falling out of love with one Thorn brother. She was falling deeply and dangerously in love with another. And in that moment of shared vulnerability, a single act of comfort and desperation, a new secret was forged. One that would prove far more momentous than the one that had destroyed her marriage. Comment if you think Clara and Grant should be together. What do you think Elias's next move will be? Chapter 4. The Final Checkmate. The morning after the kiss was awkward. They tacitly agreed to step back. Their relationship reverted to careful friendship and support. But the electricity of that night buzzed beneath every conversation, every shared glance. The secret bound them, even as they tried to maintain a respectable distance. Clara, now well into her 2nd trimester, knew she couldn't live off Grant's kindness forever. She needed to build a life for herself and her baby. The fire Elias had tried to extinguish was reignited not by anger, but by purpose. She took the small settlement her lawyer had managed to secure from Elias's initial offer. He wanted a quick, quiet divorce, and a fight was bad for his image, and invested everything in herself. Based on her expertise, she founded a small online art consultancy called Gallery Dawn. She specialized in representing the same artists Elias had sneered at: talented, overlooked, and brilliant. She built a website from her sofa, held video meetings, and used her impeccable eye to connect new collectors with affordable, meaningful art. It was grueling work fueled by prenatal vitamins and a fierce desire to prove she was more than Mrs. Elias Thorne. Meanwhile, Elias and Serena were running a scorched earth campaign against her reputation. They were the new darlings of the gossip columns, photographed everywhere from the French Riviera to the Swiss Alps. In a carefully curated interview for a luxury magazine, Serena, dripping with false sincerity, spoke of Elias's unhappiness in his marriage and how she had simply been there to support her two best friends. The implication was clear. Clara was unstable, cold, and had driven her husband away. Elias, for his part, played the role of the reluctant victim of a loveless marriage, finally finding happiness. The stories hurt, but they also fueled Clara's resolve. Every glossy article about them was another shovel of coal into the furnace of her ambition. Grant was her silent partner in this fight. He would send her links to business articles, proofread her proposals, and patiently listen as she vented about the latest PR stunt Elias and Serena had pulled. As her belly grew, so did her business. She made her first big sale, a hauntingly beautiful series of paintings by a young artist to a well-known hotelier. The commission was more money than she had ever earned on her own. It was a victory that tasted sweeter than any of Elias's diamonds. The last month was an aggressive siege. Elias's lawyers grew more aggressive, demanding updates on her health, insisting on being notified the moment she went into labor. He was trying to control the narrative, to position himself as the concerned father. Clara, with Grant's unwavering support, went dark. She changed her phone number. She communicated only through her lawyer. She focused on the life growing inside her, a life she would protect with a lioness's ferocity. What do you think will happen at the hospital? Leave us your prediction in the comments. Chapter 5. The Paternity Twist. The night her water broke was a dark, stormy Tuesday. She called the two numbers on her emergency contacts, her doctor and Grant. He was there in 15 minutes, his face pale with worry, but his hand steady as he helped her down the stairs and into a cab. In the sterile hospital room, as the contractions grew in intensity, the noise of the outside world faded. There was no Elias, no Serena, no lawyers. There was only the primal, overwhelming task of bringing her son into the world. And Grant was there, holding her hand, wiping her brow. His voice was a constant, soothing presence in the storm of her pain. He was her anchor, her partner in the truest sense of the word. As dawn broke over the city, after 18 grueling hours of labor, Clara gave birth to a beautiful, healthy baby boy. He had a shock of dark hair and a surprisingly loud cry. When the nurse placed the baby on her chest, Clara wept, not from pain or sorrow, but from a love so fierce and absolute it eclipsed everything else. She looked at Grant, his face etched with his own tears. He looked at the baby, then at her, and his smile was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. "He's perfect, Clara," he whispered. "What's his name?" She looked down at her son, who had been conceived in a cold, loveless marriage, but carried to term through a season of unexpected love and support. She thought of Elias's arrogant demand to name him Elias Jr. A small, triumphant smile touched her lips. "His name," she said, her voice clear and strong, "is Oliver Santiago, and his last name is my maiden name. He is Oliver Santiago Ferrer." In that moment, she was not just a mother, she was free. Subscribe now to watch the stunning confrontation that changes this family's destiny forever. Comment your theories on the end of the story. Chapter 6. The Reckoning. The first 72 hours of Oliver's life were a sacred, quiet bubble. The world had contracted to the size of the hospital bed, to the warmth of her son's tiny body against her chest, to the soft, milky scent of his skin. Grant was the gentle guardian of her peace. He moved with a quiet reverence, a man in awe. He acted as a gatekeeper, intercepting the ostentatious, PO-driven flower arrangements that started arriving from Elias Thorne's office, and politely but firmly turning away the well-meaning but intrusive hospital social liaisons. In his large, capable hands, holding a being so small, Clara saw a look of such deep, unguarded tenderness on his face. It made her heart ache with a beautiful, complicated sorrow. Their unspoken secret, the kiss that had changed everything, floated between them, not as a source of tension, but as an invisible shared thread connecting all three of them. But both knew the bubble was fragile, destined to burst. The afternoon they were due to be discharged. As Clara carefully dressed Oliver in a soft, simple onesie, a shadow fell across the doorway. It was not a knock. It was an arrival. Elias Thorne stood there, a figure of such jarring perfection that he seemed to suck all the warmth and air from the room. He was flanked by his two legal sentinels, stark men in dark suits, their expressions devoid of emotion. And behind them, a nervous phantom clinging to the edge of the scene. Serena. Her expensive dress seemed ill-fitting, her makeup a brittle mask over her anxiety. "Clara," Elias began, his voice a smooth, polished stone of condescension. He didn't look at her, his eyes immediately searching for the baby. "I was told there were complications with the birth. Apparently, a simple courtesy call from my brother was too much to ask." Clara's arms tightened instinctively around Oliver, her body forming a protective shield. Grant, who had been packing Clara's bag, instantly straightened, his entire posture shifting from relaxed to rigid. He moved without thought, a solid, immovable object, placing himself between Elias and the bed. "This is a private hospital room, Elias, not a boardroom," Grant said, his voice low and filled with a cold fury Clara had never heard from him before. "You are not welcome here." Elias's gaze flickered to his brother, a spark of irritation in his eyes. "Grant, still playing the white knight for lost causes, I see. Move, I've come to see my son." He moved to step around Grant, his focus unwavering like a predator zeroing in on its prey. It was then that Serena's voice, thin and reedy, cut the tension. "He's so small, Elias," she muttered. She was trying to play her part, the supportive partner. But her heart was clearly not in it. "You don't have a son here." Clara's voice cut the air, louder than she expected, propelled by a rush of pure adrenaline. "You forfeited that right 9 months ago. This is my son." A smug, epiro-arrogant smile touched Elias's lips. "Don't be so melodramatic, Clara. It doesn't suit you. I am here to do the right thing, to be the bigger person. I've come to give him my name, the Thorne name, a name that will ensure he never wants for anything." "He doesn't need your name," Grant retorted, his jaw tight. "He has a mother who loves him. That's more than you can say." The barb hit home. Elias's face darkened. The polished facade cracked for a second. "This conversation doesn't concern you, little brother. This is between her and me." He turned his formidable attention back to Clara. "I am his father. It is a biological fact. I have rights, and I have come to see him." "No," Clara said again, the single word a declaration of war. Elias's legendary temper, always simmering just below his cold exterior, finally boiled over. The control was gone. "Don't be ridiculous. I am not asking you, Clara. I am telling you I want a paternity test. We will have it all made official right now. Draw up the papers and put an end to any of your sentimental games." His arrogance was a physical force, pressing down on her. He didn't have a single doubt. The test for him wasn't a search for the truth, but a legal stamp, a formality to confirm his ownership of this new asset. He would frame the certificate, another trophy for his collection, and in that moment, seeing the smug certainty on his face and the flash of sheer terror in Grant's eyes, Clara saw her path with blinding clarity. She had been on the defensive for 9 long months, absorbing his blows, reacting to his moves. Not anymore. The secret she and Grant had kept, the one she carried with a mix of shame and hope, was not a weakness. It was a trump card, and Elias, in his arrogance, was demanding she play it. A profound, almost unnatural calm settled over her. She took a breath, exhaling slowly, meeting Elias's furious glare with a disconcerting placidity. "A paternity test?" she repeated, her voice even and measured. "Are you absolutely sure that is what you want, Elias?" "Of course I'm sure," he scoffed, misinterpreting her calmness as a sign of imminent surrender. "Let's just get this over with." "Fine," Clara stated, her voice as cold and sharp as ice. "But on my terms. We do it now, with a hospital lab technician, and all of us stay in this room until the results are in. You, me, Serena, Grant, your lawyers can be witnesses. We will have the hospital head of obstetrics deliver the results personally." A sworn statement. "No games, Elias. Just the unvarnished truth. Can you handle that?" Confident of the outcome, Elias nodded his assent. A brusque, dismissive gesture. Whatever it takes. The next hour was an agonizing masterclass in tension. A lab tech, her face a neutral mask, came and went, taking a gentle swab from a sleeping Oliver's cheek and a peremptory, almost contemptuous one from Elias. The 6 of them sat in the cramped, sterile room, trapped in a suffocating silence. Finally, the door opened. Dr. Alba, the head of maternity, walked in. A no-nonsense woman in her 50s, she held a single sealed manila envelope. Elias's lawyers straightened their ties, getting into position, like runners at a starting block. "I have the results of the paternal DNA comparison for the child, Oliver Santiago Ferrer," Dr. Alba announced, her voice formal and devoid of inflection as she broke the seal. Elias smirked. It was a smile of pure, unadulterated triumph, the smile of a man who had never lost a battle that truly mattered. "And?" he demanded, the word dripping with impatience. Dr. Alba scanned the document in her hand. She looked up, bypassing Elias completely, and landing directly on Clara. A flash of something unreadable, startled respect, maybe even a hint of complicity, shone in her eyes before her professional mask settled back into place. She cleared her throat, letting the silence stretch, drawing out the moment. "Based on the analysis performed," she began, her voice resonating with clinical authority, "the probability of paternity for the presumed father, Mr. Elias Thorne, Itunduwo." The words dropped into the silent room like stones into a perfectly still pond. The ripples of their meaning spread in devastating waves. Serena let out a strangled gasp, her hand flying to her mouth. Elias's triumphant smile froze. Then it cracked and shattered, replaced by a mask of absolute disbelief. "What?" he stammered, the sound a strange, pathetic squeak. "That's impossible. It's a mistake. Rerun the test." "The test has a 99% accuracy rate," Dr. Alba stated flatly, her expression unyielding. "There is no mistake. You are not the father of this child." Elias's head whipped toward Clara, his face a maelstrom of confusion. transforming into a pure, unhinged rage. "What is this? What kind of trick are you playing?" His voice began to rise, echoing in the small space. "Who is it? Who is the father?" he roared, the sound bouncing off the sterile walls. Clara did not flinch. She held his wild, furious gaze, her heart beating a triumphant rhythm against her ribs. She had endured 9 months of his cruelty, his indifference, his public campaign to paint her as the villain. This was her moment. This was justice. She said nothing. She simply let her gaze drift from Elias's contorted face and land softly, deliberately, on Grant. And Elias, his mind racing, followed her gaze. He saw his brother, his quiet, academic, insignificant brother, standing beside the woman he had discarded. He saw the look on Grant's face, a complex tapestry of shock, fear, and a dawning comprehension. The pieces began to click into place in Elias's mind with the force of a physical blow. Grant's constant presence, his quiet devotion, the way he looked at her, the way she looked at him. The fiery anger on Elias's face instantly chilled, curdling into something far more toxic and pathetic. The deep, crushing wound of a narcissist who has been completely, utterly unmasked. "You!" Elias whispered, the word laced with venomous disbelief. All his rage now centered on his brother. "You!" Grant met his brother's hateful stare. The initial shock receded, replaced by a stillness, a resolve as hard as steel that he never knew he possessed. He looked at Clara, at her unbelievable courage. He looked at the beautiful, perfect baby in her arms. His son. He had been prepared to love this child as his own forever. But fate, in its infinite, mysterious wisdom, had delivered a deeper truth than he had ever dreamed. He straightened to his full height, and for the first time in his life, he felt taller than his brother. He was no longer the second best, the black sheep. He was a father. He was a partner. He was the one who stayed. "Yes, Elias," Grant said, his voice clear and unbroken, ringing with a finality that shattered what was left of Elias's world. "I am." The story doesn't end here. Dare to guess how the world will react to this revelation? Like and share to support Clara and Grant. A new family. Chapter 7. A love more precious than gold. The silence that descended upon the hospital room after Elias's departure was deafening. A vacuum left by a star that had collapsed. Elias had not just left. He had evaporated. His immense presence dissolved into nothingness against the raw, undeniable truth. His lawyers, paid to order and control, looked like drowned birds, their briefcases suddenly flimsy accessories as they scrambled to follow their client's ghost. Serena was still a statue of horrified realization, carved into the doorway. The vibrant, chaotic energy that was her signature was extinguished, leaving behind a pale, shaking woman. Her eyes, fragile and empty, flickered from the empty doorway to Clara, who was now a portrait of serene power, cradling the son Serena had believed was her ticket to a permanent place in the Thorne dynasty. The baby was not an heir. He was a symbol of her spectacular miscalculation. He was proof that she had traded her profound friendship with Clara not for a king, but for a fool. A dry, rasping sob escaped her lips. She did not look at Grant. She couldn't. He was a variable she had never bothered to compute. With one last phantom look at Clara, a look that pleaded for an absolution Clara no longer possessed, Serena turned and fled, her heels making a frantic, desperate rhythm down the polished hospital corridor, chasing a future that had just vanished. Alone at last in the sacred stillness, Clara's and Grant's eyes finally met. The chasm of secrets and unsaid feelings that had separated them for months was gone, bridged by a single, breathtaking revelation. "Grant," Clara whispered, her voice a fragile mix of awe and relief. Her hand trembled as she adjusted Oliver's blanket. I had to. His arrogance, the way he looked at Oliver like he was a stock option. She took a shaky breath. I wasn't sure. I only hoped. After that night, I counted the weeks over and over. It seemed possible, but I was too afraid to believe it. Grant walked over. His feet felt heavy, his heart hammering against his ribs. He knelt beside her bed, his eyes fixed on the baby's small, perfect face. Oliver, his son. The words were a silent, devastating explosion in his mind. He had spent months preparing to be the loving uncle, the supportive friend, the man who would stand in the shadow of his brother's biological claim and love this child fiercely and quietly. He had been prepared to find his joy on the margins. It doesn't matter when you knew, he said, his voice thick with an emotion so overwhelming it almost stole his breath. He reached out a hesitant hand, his finger gently tracing the soft curve of Oliver's cheek. The baby stirred, his small mouth making a soft cooing sound. I would have loved him anyway. I have since the moment you told me you were pregnant. He looked up at her. His eyes, those kind, thoughtful eyes she had come to rely on, shining with a bright, tear-filled light. But this, Clara, what you just gave me, this is a miracle. He wasn't just talking about the baby. He was talking about freedom, about legitimacy, about the incredible gift of a future he had never dared to imagine. The news of the paternity test detonated with the force of a bomb in the exclusive, insular world of the Thorne family and their peers. The story was simply too perfect in its karmic cruelty. Elias Thorne, the titan of industry, the master manipulator, had been publicly exposed as the cuckolded fool. The narrative he and Serena had so carefully crafted of a tragic hero escaping a cold marriage was flipped overnight. He was now the villain who had heartlessly abandoned his pregnant wife for her best friend, only to be delivered the final checkmate. The tabloids rejoiced. Business rivals smirked over their morning papers. The Thorne name, once a symbol of untouchable power, was now the punchline of a very public, very expensive joke. Elias's public humiliation was total. He became a recluse, his name vanishing from the social pages and financial news. His relationship with Serena, built on the treacherous ground of shared betrayal, crumbled. She was gone within a month. In a surprising turn, it was the Thorne matriarch, Leonora, who made the first move. A woman forged in iron and pragmatism, she cared little for feelings, but everything for legacy. The scandal was an embarrassment, but the existence of a grandson, a direct male heir from the son she had always deemed too soft, was a fact she couldn't ignore. Tentative invitations to family gatherings were extended. Clara and Grant, cautiously, accepted them, not for social validation, but to ensure Oliver knew his family on their own terms. For Clara, life settled into a rhythm that was more beautiful than any symphony she could have imagined. Her art consultancy, Gallery Dawn, became a quiet force in the art world. She was no longer Elias Thorne's beautiful wife. She was Clara Ferrer, a name she had reclaimed. Their love story unfolded not in grand gestures, but in the small, sacred moments of daily life. It was in the way he took Oliver in the mornings so she could sleep an extra hour. It was in the way she brought him a mug of tea exactly how he liked it when he was grading papers late at night. It was a partnership forged in the crucible of crisis, now tempered into a bond of deep respect and enduring love. They were two survivors who had found their harbor in one another. One autumn evening, almost a year to the day, she had faced Elias in that hospital room. Clara was at the park. The leaves were a riot of gold and red, and Oliver's shrieks of delight echoed in the air as she pushed him on the swings. Grant walked up behind her, his familiar warmth a comforting presence. Before his arms circled her waist, he rested his chin on her shoulder, and together they watched their son. "Fly, do you ever think about it all?" Clara asked, her voice a soft murmur against the backdrop of the park. "The penthouse seems like a different life, like a story I read about someone else." Grant was silent for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the pure, unadulterated joy on his son's face. "I think about the man I was," he admitted, his voice low and thoughtful, the quiet professor, always on the fringe of my own family's drama. "I never thought a life like this was possible for me." He tightened his embrace, pulling her closer. "Everything that happened, Clara, every terrible, painful moment, was just the long, complicated road that led me right here, to this park, with you and our son." He turned his head and kissed her temple softly. "It led me home, and I wouldn't change a single step of the journey." Clara leaned back into his solid body. A slow, genuine smile spread across her face. The ghosts of the past were finally gone, banished by the bright, warm light of the present. The gilded cage was a distant memory. This, right here, was real life. This was freedom. This was a love story, richer than any fortune. A family built from the ashes, stronger and more precious than anything she had ever dreamed. Were you moved by Clara's story? Hit like to show your support, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that will make you reflect on life, love, and justice.